You're listening to Masters Decoded podcast series. I'm your host and the chief decoder, Anis Merchant. Through this podcast, I bring in guests who are successful in a different walk of life to decode and map out their careers and journeys with the hope that we gain all our learnings. The world around us is changing exponentially, and how the impact of artificial intelligence, technology, and other socio-economic factors have either influenced or enhanced my guests' careers. My next guest on today's episode is going to make you feel hungry as he takes all of us on a gastronomical and fun trip down the memory lane. I'm pleased to have a conversation with Jaydeep Mukherjee, also known as JD in the food industry. JD is an alumnus of IHM Mumbai and started his career with Taj Mahal Hotel, Mumbai, where he earned his chef stripes. Post his career with Taj Mahal Hotels, he joined the infamous and iconic luxury cruise liner Queen Elizabeth II. In 2002, he took the mantle of Chef de Cuisine, then that of Executive Chef, and finally Corporate Executive Chef of deGustibus Hospitality. The Maverick company gave the country the iconic Indigo and rewrote the rules of exquisite gastronomy in Mumbai. In the 16 years spent with the company, Chef JD was instrumental in opening new restaurant owned and operated by DHPL. In August 2018, Chef JD joined Impresario Handmade Restaurants as brand head for the decade-old Smokehouse Deli and was instrumental in revamping the brand into a new fresh avatar. From refreshing the menu to introducing new techniques and styles of cooking, JD has even kickstarted the Goodness to Go vertical that will focus on healthy, organic food freshly made for patrons to grab a quick meal. A man of varied interests, JD is an avid traveler and biker, a talented photographer, and reasonably skilled musician, but yes, the kitchen remains his first love. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with JD, and I'm sure you would too post this engaging conversation. So let me get on with it. Hi JD, welcome to Masters Decoded podcast series. Thanks for taking time out.
Hey Anis, how are you doing? Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thanks for asking, JD. For the benefit of the audience, JD, it would be good for you to share a little bit about yourself, what you currently do, and what is your current role in the company you work for.
So yes, JD is actually Jaydeep Mukherjee. I came to study in Bombay many years back. So while at the IHM Bombay, which was the hotel school of choice those days, Jaydeep got rechristened to JD, and it has stuck. Most people in the industry know me as JD, and few as Jaydeep. So yeah, I've been a chef all my life and all my working life, and I've been with several companies, and currently I am with a huge, beautiful restaurant company called Impresario Hospitality. Impresario is the company that owns and runs everything from social to smokehouse delis to mocha, and these are we call them handmade restaurants. So that's the culture of the company. And I look after Smokehouse Delis. I head the brand Smokehouse Delis, and I'm the custodian of the brand, so to say. And I look after everything about the brand, the experience, the offerings, the food, the menus, you name it.
So you mentioned you came to Mumbai and you studied food as a subject in IHM. But what got you started in the food industry, if you take it back?
So if I take it back, I'll have to take it back many, many years
Sure.
to the early childhood days. So I grew up in a small industrial city called Jamshedpur. My dad was with the Tatas, and he was an
Hmm.
engineer and looked after a certain department there. So growing up was in this beautiful, slightly hilly township that Telco had, which was an integrated place. So growing up had a lot of outdoor activities involved. So we were a bunch of guys who almost we were outdoors for hours every day, and outdoors meant treks, hikes, cycling trips here and there, and we just spent so much time outside that at a point as we grow older, to learn how to cook or to have some basic cooking skills was a must. Alongside, we were also Boy Scouts, so we had these camps we went to We had these little gatherings in the woods or on some riverbed or some place around town, and we were expected to go there equipped with whatever was the agenda for the day. I mean, tools for that, and oftentimes it was cooking. It entailed cooking up, whipping up something.
Hmm.
So from early childhood to do a few things, even at home, was the norm pretty much. And I was cooking bits and pieces, sandwiches or whatever. I mean, hadn't been exposed to a lot of food then, but then I did my little bit of cooking every now and then. So exposure began there. My ancestral home was in Kolkata, and every summer I used to spend a lot of my summer there. So this was this huge ancestral, 300 almost years old house, which was massive, and the entire clan kind of congregated there from across the globe, across various cities, and it became a very festive affair every summer. And we had these huge fleet of cooks in the house, and they were called Thakurs,
Mm-hmm.
and they were from Orissa,
Yeah.
most of them.
Yeah.
So in Bengal, a lot of cooks were actually from Orissa, and they did Bengali food, and there isn't so much difference really. And these we had this complete fleet of Thakurs. I can remember about four of them right now, four or five of them,
Okay.
and that was my first exposure to an organized kitchen, so to say. They didn't wear chef coats.
Okay.
They worked in dhotis and kurtas, I mean banyans.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they had a very dictated. There was a proper hierarchy. The head thakur was the master. He gave the commands. Everybody followed. There was a certain way that everything had to be done, and he took people to task really, and he was a complete Puritan, and he enforced a very strong discipline in his team.
Hmm.
And he swatted us kids. The house was full of kids my age, few years senior, junior, all of that. And he swatted us kids out of his kitchen like he'd be swatting the flies, because we bothered him all the time. So something or the other was always cooking in that huge kitchen and over charcoal fires. And I remember those smells still, which is amazing. It's been what, about many, many years now, many decades now. I still remember those distinct smells, those aromas of fresh turmeric being ground on those stones, masalas being ground. There weren't any mixer grinders there. There was no gas in the house. It was all cooked over charcoal flames. So that was my first exposure to cooking, and I was besotted. I loved everything that came out of there. Kept eating all the time. So food has always had a soft corner in my heart. So eating and then eventually cooking. So finally, at one point when a career choice had to be made, there were several options,
Mm-hmm.
and designing was something I was very serious about. The army, in fact, was something I was more serious about.
Okay.
But eventually, it so happened that I think I found my calling here. So I came to Bombay. I got selected at the IHM. There was a joint entrance exam in those days, and came to Bombay. I had folks here, so I lived for a while with my uncle and auntie, and eventually moved into the hostel, and that's how life in the industry began.
Very impressive. The way you carved out the story of your ancestral home in Kolkata, it just I could see a reel of a movie playing in front of my eyes. It was beautiful the way you spoke about the pounding of the masalas, the chef, you know, shooing away the kids. It was surreal, I would just say. It was beautiful the way you put it. So on that, I see a lot from the head thakur. You've taken some of those learnings, and have you imbibed some of those, I would say, discipline in your day-to-day life as you went on to the journey of being a chef? Because I see that as a big impact in your thinking as well, meaning at least just hearing you out, I could see that.
Yeah, completely, Anis. So, not not verbatim, if I can
Sure.
say so. Perhaps also not, in that exact description. But what I learned, and this is no exaggeration. What I learned even then at that very nascent stage of my formative years, was that there had to be that drive for excellence.
Hmm.
Uh, they were cooking for 50 plus people for every meal. These were household meals. These weren't restaurant meals.
Yeah.
But the masala had to be ground just right. The
Yeah.
mustard had to be ground just right. A little here and there, and the mustard. And mustard is a huge thing in a Bengali household.
Yes.
So it had to be ground just right, or it could go bitter.
Yep.
Or if a chutney had to be made, the sugar syrup had to be thickened just right or reduced just right till it formed those three strings or four strings, whatever the case may be. I mean, those weren't the days where you had sugar thermometers like we do in our kitchens today. But then
Yeah.
today I realize, the science behind it. But even those people who were from villages and did not have any education, so to say, were doing these things with that one pursuit for excellence, which to me, I mean, was a huge thing. I perhaps did not perceive it in this fashion then, but today, looking back, that is the only realization, and I think I have managed to carry that forward. Take trouble, take go in for the details. I think the details is where everything is, and I think it pertains to all facets, all aspects of your life. I wouldn't you agree? I
Yeah.
mean, whether it's a motorcycle ride that I'm doing, or whether I'm cooking, or photography, or music, whatever it may be, the beauty or the final, I mean, whatever stage of excellence that you reach is, I think, is in the minor details, and those cannot be ignored. So that one learning I brought to my kitchen in a very big way,
Okay.
and I've been a hard taskmaster. A lot of my boys will vouch for it, but I believe over the years I've also managed to teach people a few good things in life, which they have carried forward with them. And the largest learning has been there aren't any shortcuts, really.
Sure. No, and you bring up a very interesting point. I'm a big foodie myself, and I also have an aspiration that one day I will have my own restaurant. That's
Super.
my retirement philosophy. Not go ahead and put my legs up on an armchair, but actually open up a restaurant because I love eating food and love treating people with food. Uh,
Nice. I'll help you with that.
Sure. Look forward to it. In fact, just before this, I was helping my family. They're cooking up something right now. So I was just helping them out. But, anyways, but I also believe that through my own journey, I've realized that, as you rightly said, a little bit here or a little bit there can taste the taste profile of a food or a particular item in the food drastically. And I believe strongly that food is a blend of art and science. Art, why? Because if food look good, it invokes your senses from a visual perspective, and if it tastes good, it invokes all the other senses. And the entire food being cooked, also invokes your hearing senses. So it's a balance of art and science, at least in my perspective. Would you agree?
Completely, Anis. I think that's a very beautiful point. It's a very valid point. It's a point that the industry ponders on almost, it's been a very age-old discussion,
Yeah.
whether it's science, whether it's arts. I think it's a beautiful combination of both. I mean, let me kind of elaborate on that. Let's say we are speaking of the perfect choux pastry, or the perfect flaky pastry, laminated pastry.
Yeah.
You have this croissant at some store, and it is handmade, and it is just beautiful. You take a bite, it is just beautiful, crispy on the outside, moist on the inside, buttery, and you see these thousands of layers inside, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what is it? Is it art? It is science. Is it science? It's science.
Yeah, it
Correct.
is
I mean,
science.
if it isn't that perfect, it isn't that perfect fold. It isn't. If it isn't that perfect blend or the ratio of flour to butter to sugar, all of that, and in the process of lamination, I mean that's physics.
Yeah.
If the butter is not at the perfect temperature, if it's been worked too much, you will not get that product. You will get something which is entirely different, and that applies to almost everything that is cooking. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that perfect caramelization that makes, that tandoori chicken just out of the world. I mean, or that or the creme brulee, the crust on top, just beautiful, just cracks under a little tap from your spoon, and the custard there inside is just creamy and gooey and melts in your mouth. So all of this is science. But then, would it be possible to replicate these in a chemistry lab? I wouldn't think so. Why? Because I mean, why does it taste so divine? It's also because the guy there is adding his personal, that little bit of affection to for the trade. For I mean, he's adding that little bit of his soul, of his touch to it, and that is the reason. So that could be the art part of it. He decorates it. He thinks of these fabulous plate presentations and all of that. So great science to cook it with, and then a beautiful aesthetic approach towards plating it. That is art, and it's a combination. And I think through the process, at every stage, both work quite parallelly, one next to the other, to get you that one plate that the chef is so proud for you uh, presents to you, and you're just besotted because it is out of the world.
You've just made me hungry, sir. So, when I look at your professional career, you worked after your graduation from the IHM. You worked for a cruise liner, if I'm not mistaken, and
No, I started off straight out of IHM Bombay. I got selected by the Taj
Taj
Group
Group.
of hotels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was at the Taj Mahal Mumbai for several years. I, in fact, earned my stripes, so to say, there. So
Mm,
we had to spend the initial 2 years like really slogging our butts off. I mean, 18, 20 hours a day.
yeah.
And after which you get your stripes, you get your scarf, so to say.
Yeah.
And the scarf is a black and white checkered scarf. Till then, you've been wearing a white scarf.
Mm-hmm.
You know what a chef's scarf
Yep.
looks like,
Yeah.
right? And the
Yeah.
little knot in front.
Yes.
And then after 2 years, 2.5 years in some cases, you earned your striped scarf, and that immediately projected you, and landed you in another league. Why? Because only chefs wore that. Chefs, regardless of their position.
Mm.
The corporate, the executive chef of the hotel, of course, wore a different scarf. No, I think at Taj he also wore the same scarf. So once you earn the black and white, there was no differentiation between chefs. It wasn't like, so it was a very big deal in our times. So 2 years there, and then 2.5 years there. And I worked at the Zodiac Grill restaurant, which
Mm-hmm.
was then the temple almost,
Yeah.
of good cuisine, of great novel of European food. Post that, I moved on to work on a cruise liner on ships owned by this company called Cunard,
Mm-hmm.
the same company that owned the Titanic, by the way.
Yeah.
So, age-old British company. Now it's American though. So I spent some lovely years traveling the world, sailing the world on two ships. One was called the Royal Viking Sun, which was a much smaller ship, but was hugely rated in the Berlitz Guide. So smaller, but then far, far more exclusive. So very few passengers, but very expensive cruises. So naturally, it brought in some very high-end people. And the other was the QE2, which was a massive ship, but at the same time was world renowned, and it did some amazing cruises. So yeah, world cruises, cruises through Scandinavia, down under Africa. I mean,
Nice.
I've visited a lot of countries and sailed the world that way.
Beautiful. I don't know if you know this, but I also started my career in food industry, not as a professional, but it was a summer job. Uh,
Okay.
but I ended up working for there for 3 years. The first store of McDonald's in India, which was in Mumbai, the Bandra one, I was a manager there. Left as a manager there. Uh, so that's why the food passion came up from my first job, and it is still there. But
I see you opening one very soon.
sure, definitely. After all this lockdown, definitely it's up in my cards. But when I look at all the companies you worked for before
Right.
even Smokehouse and Impresario, has there been any common theme you've seen between these companies or the cruise liner?
My longest stint in this business of hospitality, in the business of food,
Yeah,
uh, has been with deGustibus Hospitality.
yeah,
deGustibus per se is not well known as a company, but Indigo Delhi was
yes,
the brand that I started.
okay,
I started, meaning, of course, I worked for the company, but I was the chef who started the first Indigo Delhi in Kolaba, and
mm-hmm.
then I did the next nine. So I started 10 of them. Uh, before I finally quit. So I was with Rahul Akirkar with the company for all of 16 years, and with Rahul for a better part of those 16 years. I think about 12, some 12, 12 and a half years were with Rahul. And so through my career, I've worked with some very good people, uh, guys who understood hospitality,
Mm-hmm.
had a great attitude towards hospitality, felt hospitality, at the bottom of their heart, and loved to mingle, loved to bring to people not just good food, gastronomy in general.
Okay.
Good food, great hospitality, complete friendly vibes, and all of that. So this is what I learned from the stalwarts in the business. I mean, there were incidents where a table perhaps did not, let's say, at Indigo in those days when Indigo was at its, at its prime. A table perhaps commented that everything else was awesome, but the lobster risotto today was not up to the mark. And Rahul would just say, you know what, your meal is on me. I mean, it's a contract. It's an unsigned contract between you and me that you've come in here, you put your faith and trust in me,
Yeah.
and if for some reason I have not been able to live up to your expectations, I do not have the right to charge you or take any money from you. And I mean, stuff like this, which no business school would teach you or no business leader would teach you, is what I learned from him. I mean, basics of hospitality, like you would treat people in the restaurant exactly the way you would treat them at home. And did it mean losses? No, it didn't. I mean, things like this, were done with with great intentions. And oftentimes people were so happy and so touched and so overwhelmed by this act of honesty and kindness that they would bring back friends. They would come back in very large numbers, and then it actually made more business sense. But we didn't do it from that perspective. So what I'm trying to explain is that, yeah, meaning these stalwarts of the industry, so 16 years with a person like him, and then we grew together. So the Delhi's became my baby, and I looked after them, and we did fabulous things there. So
Hmm.
currently with Impresario Hospitality, where I joined because I got this opportunity from Riaz Amlani, who is a guy who's also a huge stalwart of the industry
Yeah.
and somebody I've admired all my working life, right from when he started his first restaurants on Girgaon Chowpatty.
Yeah.
That's when I first heard of Riaz and got to meet him eventually uh, very soon after that. And we've kept in touch over the years, and always I've admired him for what he stood for the balls he had, for the stuff that he's done in the business,
Yeah.
and for social, for his complete his complete thinking, for what he has brought to the trade, and the kind of risks he's taken to bring to the trade and to the city and to our country in general. The huge benchmarks that he's set and broken and reset, and the barriers that he's moved. I admire him hugely. I'm with him today and working and taking care of Smokehouse Delhi, where I'm doing interesting things. And let's see what the future holds for us post this crisis.
Yep. Things are definitely interesting in these testing times. But you know, during these testing times, and you've seen a lot in the last 2 decades, if somebody is thinking about building a career today, what would you advise them, specifically in the food industry? And there's so much to do now in food industry than when you started off.
Correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I do see people who have multitudes of careers now. Uh, you can be a sous chef, pastry chef. There can be, meaning if I'm saying it right, if I understand it right. But there's so many careers than when you started off.
I agree, Anis, with most of what you're saying. I disagree with a little bit of what you're saying. So,
Okay.
also, kind of, to sum up one little bit that I wished to speak of in your as part of your earlier question.
Okay.
So, what I found common, and it's also relevant to this question, what I found common to these larger companies, and that was your question,
Yeah.
is the pursuit of excellence. Is
Hmm.
the pursuit of excellence. So, now, the relevance of that to this question is, get into this business only if you're 100% sure that you have it in you.
Okay.
Okay. Trust me, and I'm saying this from years of experience, not many people do.
Okay.
Okay, it is one thing to be told by friends and family that you're good, that you make this particular dish well or that particular dish well. It's a completely different ball game to get into the business, sink in huge, huge sums of money, and then see another facet of the business that you'd completely not thought of or kind of not been willing to get into, is what you realize. It's like any other business, but the risks and the pitfalls are far, far, far too many. I mean, you're just kind of governed by archaic laws, rules, regulations, licensing, all of that. Margins are pathetic, despite what anybody may tell you. GST and all of this just eats everything up. The fact that we don't get input credit and all of that. To get into the business, and even from a complete employee perspective, I mean, all of this I said is for people who may want to invest money and do the business of food. And even from an employee perspective, it isn't a very well paid industry. For the first many years of your career,
Yeah.
you will earn a fraction of what your friends with MBAs or engineering or other degrees would earn, perhaps. Forget earning a lakh rupees as you enter an industry as you would today, most other industries. Forget earning it here. To add to that, enormously long hours on your feet for most of them, unless you have a cushy back office job, which you won't, trust me. So get into it only if you really, really, really enjoy it and you feel that you have it in you. Ideally, do an internship in some restaurant which is busy, which does good business that you've admired. Most restaurants don't have any qualms about allowing interns, and you should do that. You should do a little internship. You should work with some of the stalwarts in the business and see for yourself. Do it for a couple of weeks, and you'll get a pretty clear understanding of what the business is all about, the risks, the benefits. But yes, having said all of this, would I do anything else? I do not really think so. It gives me enormous joy to feed people. I still till date observe people after I've served them that bowl of risotto or a grill or whatever, and I just kind of wait to see that first expression on their faces. And I tell you, nothing else thrills me or gives me more joy than that expression.
Amazing. It's beautiful. Now, when you think about, as the you spoke about, do it only if you have it in you, but you also see a lot of technology specifically has enabled a lot of home chefs or not trained chefs become celebrities chefs in some form or shape. Like YouTube, there are people who are earning much more than probably somebody would earn in a restaurant. What's your perspective around that?
I think it's beautiful, Anis. The kind of opportunities that have opened up today. And trust me, to be a good cook, do you really need a lot of education? Do you really need to go to a hotel school or a culinary academy? No rubbish. You don't need to go anywhere.
Yeah.
A lot of people are naturally gifted. They can whip up, uh, they can whip up magic in household kitchens. I've met so many of them. My wife is a great example of one such.
Okay.
She's a CA by education and that way by learning. But she is one of the best cooks I have known. I mean, who has not had formal culinary education. My mother was another great example. She could whip up these amazing European dishes, and this is from decades back. I'm saying her
Hmm.
learning was from the local library, where she would physically copy. I mean, you didn't have a copy machine then, you know.
Yeah.
She would physically copy recipes from Good Housekeeping and these books into a diary. I still have that diary with me. So no, I
Wow.
don't believe you need culinary education at all. You need the passion, you need love for food, and you need love for people more than love for food. You'll cook a splendid meal, put in that much more love and affection in it if the people you're cooking for are close to your heart.
Yeah.
I believe that. And yeah, love for the trade and all of that is secondary, but you need that affection in you and that passion in you. So yeah, these home cooks, some of them do just fantastic jobs, and hats off to them.
You spoke about love for food now and love for people, and in the previous conversation, you spoke about reaching excellence. And because of all of that, I do see food industry has also introduced a lot of new ingredients which typically you would not think about introducing, whether it's flowers or gold and many more such ingredients, as well as technology, like you said, the thermometer, which you didn't have in those good old days, and now you have them. What's what have you seen change in the last 22 years, which has been fascinating for you, especially?
Plenty has changed. Okay, so speaking of ingredients, yes,
Yeah,
people have, I mean, discovered a lot of ingredients. The current ingredient of choice, let's say, in the city is avocado.
yeah,
Yeah, gold foil, like you just mentioned. There are a lot of gimmicky things have been done over the years. To each his own. It's not my kind of food.
okay,
Um, I appreciate great technology. I appreciate great technology in the equipment that we use, right from, let's say, a pacojet that freezes anything, in fact, to a thermomix which does the job of great commercial mixers, plus many other things, to a sous vide, to an immersion circulator, to a smoke gun. So technology has seeped into the kitchen in across. There are some beautiful pieces of equipment out there, but all of it can be listed in the fingers of one hand, so to say.
hmm.
What hasn't changed is creativity. Even then, and it's not just creativity; it is the genre of food that you're doing, or what is it that is signature you. Are you trying to be somebody else? Are you trying to be, Ferran Adria and trying to do molecular gastronomy? Or are you trying to kind of find your own, where you stand, who you represent, what you kind of have created? So it depends entirely on all of that. But technology has helped in a very big way. Whether it is brought in new food or new products or new offerings is questionable. What it has helped do is kind of ape the West, and when we speak of European food or even Indian food, the modern Indian and all of that
Yeah,
is on account of all of this technology that's coming, right? Whether
hmm.
it has brought in better food, no, I don't think so. I don't agree. Would I want to have a pani puri, with smoke coming out of its rare and through a glass and all that? No, I don't. If I
Y-
want a good pani puri, I'll go to the best pani puri wala, in the city,
yeah,
in my neighborhood, and have a good pani puri there. If I go to an Indian kitchen, into an Indian restaurant, I'll have something Indian that he does remarkably well. A kebab, perhaps, or a dal, perhaps, or a rice, perhaps, one of these.
yeah,
So my take on technology is, please, let's use it, to create something that is outstanding. And if it is food, let the focus be on taste, let the focus be on texture, let the focus be on happiness,
hmm.
whether it gives me that at the end of the meal or not. I do not want to be part of a circus that the chef wants me to be part of. So
Okay, that
that's where I stand.
that's a very very well said point. There is a lot of circus going on today, and focus on circus rather than taste profile, which really keeps you wanting for more in many of such restaurants. So, talking about food, and you spoke about the taste profile also a lot. If I have to ask you your trade secret, what's your favorite ingredient, or the ingredient which you die by, and you would say it will be all naturally. Do not say salt because it is there in most of the food. But apart from salt, what else?
Anis, in the this 1 month that has gone by, I have cooked more than I ever have at home. So
Wow.
earlier it was maybe a dish in a fortnight or one dish a month maybe. Now I am cooking what, every other day
Okay.
almost. And what I found very fascinating is that the simplicity or even the science behind a lot of home style cooking,
Yeah.
behind a lot of so we speak of building up food in layers, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to explain is that regardless of cuisine, whether it is high elite French cuisine or whether it is American food or whether it is Indian food, and not just Indian food. I mean, whether it is any traditional, ethnic, regional Indian food, good food, you will notice is built up in layers.
Yes.
And what I'm discovering here is that there are these simple blends of, let's say, a spice and a vegetable, or a spice and an aromatic vegetable, that are age old and which marry so beautifully that you simply cannot ignore it, that it is just remarkable and it is outstanding. For example, uh, poppy seed happens to be my favorite ingredient at the moment, correct?
Okay.
Poppy seed, fresh coconut, a drop of mustard oil, and green chili. Four simple ingredients, not expensive ingredients. You blend the food together, and I tell you, it is the most outstanding blend of masala, or it is the most outstanding kind of marination that I have tasted in recent years. Ginger and fennel, soft,
Yeah.
pounded together. Amazing concoction, you know. So these have been some of my favorite ingredients. I'm trying to rediscover, re-understand, kind of educate myself on these spices. Only yesterday I was asking my wife about cloves. That,
Mm-hmm.
have you come across a recipe where the hero is clove? You know, uh, she hadn't. I'm looking it up now. I think that that complexity of the aromas of clove is just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there is so much in this country, or in ingredients that we have all around us, that we haven't yet discovered, that perhaps our grandparents cooked with and understood so much better than we do. And it bothers me that we are choosing to move away from all of this beauty, this rich, everything that we have, tradition, heritage, you name it. And we are moving away towards modern Indian with gimmicky blends and all of that. So, coming back, there's so much here that still requires discovery.
I completely agree. At our household, everything is hand pounded, and believe that, you know, let's grind up all our masalas at home rather than
Oh,
buying
very
it
nice.
from the market as a packaged food, because you don't know what's gone in first. And you, whatever you do at home, I always believe the taste of the hand passes through the food pretty quickly,
Absolutely.
and that is unique to everyone. Uh,
Absolutely.
and it passes through every type of pieces you cook. So you did touch upon a very interesting point much early on in the conversation about how, that about your own demeanor in the kitchen, and you are a tough person. So what are you like really in the kitchen? So let's say when you enter Smokehouse Delhi at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, what is your game face on? What is your game face on, and what do you put on, which basically says, okay, I am here? And then how does it come across the entire day?
So, the game face, this has changed over the years, right?
Okay.
Changed over the years and changed kind of drastically. So, in this present role, in this present avatar, so when I was meeting Riaz in the initial days of my having applied to him and all of that, he explained to me that, you've been a chef all this while. What's next, dude? What do you want to do?
Hmm.
So I said, I've been at Indigo Delhi. I pretty much looked after the cleanliness of the bathroom to the ceiling to everything. So you tell me what you want me to do, and I'm happy to do it. He said, I want a custodian, for the brand, and I was game for it.
Okay.
So in this current avatar, I don't really wear a chef coat. I don't
Okay.
get into the kitchen so much. I do, meaning you can't keep a chef, somebody who's been in the business for over 20 years, out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
I do get in, but at the same time, my involvement in the kitchen, I actually started the Indigo Delis from scratch, from conceptualizing the menus and all of that with Rahul's help. But that's where I was on the counter. I was cooking every day, the daily special menu of 15 dishes. I designed, I drew up, I curated, got the ingredients, and that's where I did a lot of cooking.
Nice.
So single-minded devotion and pursuit towards excellence. My way or the highway, very, very, very clearly. So any professional kitchen, whether somebody likes it or not, is run like the army, is run like the military.
Okay.
There is only one boss, it's his way, and nobody else's way. So my way of working is a mix of that to a large extent, and also a little bit of democracy.
Okay.
I allow everybody the chance to contribute towards new menus. So prior to launching something, it is an open forum for weeks together, where chefs, and I do not limit it to designations. I keep it open for everybody. I have had great bright sparks amongst the junior most guys working in my kitchen, the greenhorns.
Mm-hmm.
I have had some really dud sous chefs who got into the business simply because somebody told them that you should be a chef, but didn't have an iota of creativity in them. So I've worked with all kinds. So I leave it open. People come up with ideas. We brainstorm. Brainstorms are huge things in the kitchen. So
Okay.
guys come up with amazing ideas, and it is very clearly not about where the idea came from, but about the idea. So once that phase is over and we frozen on the dish, and being the boss, you given your last bit of instruction because you perceive things a certain way. All of that is done. Then there is no deviation. So the game phase changes when the deviation sets in. So you explain to the boy that this lobster has to be seared at, let's say, 180 degrees Celsius or 200 degrees Celsius. The pan should be smoking hot and all of that. And it should just be seared and then should be put into butter, which is at 73 degrees, and then poached or whatever. And you come into the kitchen the following day and you realize that none of these things, or the temperatures are askew by 10, 15 degrees. So that's when the game phase changes.
Okay.
And that's when oftentimes I become a complete terror, have been. But do I have regrets? I don't think so. I do not think excellence can be achieved uh, by being nice and sweet all the time. I have no pretenses about it. I am not nice and sweet all the time. At the same time, if somebody recognizes and understands that there is a lot to learn from somebody, I don't think his his being harsh or his being completely aggressive about it should matter. And in most cases, it hasn't mattered. I am in touch with boys who have trained under me over many years, and they've not been working for me now for many years, decades almost, but they keep in touch. I have great respect for them. They respect me a lot, and I think that is what finally matters. It's not about being a yes man. It's not about being nice and sweet to people. It's about chasing excellence and being willing to pay a certain price, and being willing to kind of pay the toll on it.
And across these careers and across these brands which you have worked with, JD, you might have had some quirky moments. I have had in the first 3 years of my life,
Right.
and restaurants industry has that, and many of them. And you can almost write a book of those quirky moments. At least I could do that for the first 3 years of my life. Do you remember any of them, or you want to highlight?
Oh, many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so incidents right from my days at Zodiac Grill, where I worked under Chef Amit Chaudhary, who's currently the big boss of Taj Mahal Hotel, Mumbai.
Yeah.
Chef Amit is somebody I have great respect for. So he was my boss. He ran the kitchen. He was in charge of Zodiac, but at the same time, he was also a very dear friend, almost, not a friend really. I mean, we were way junior and we were greenhorns then, and he was our guru then. But
Okay.
he treated us with such great respect and such conviviality and friendship almost, that we spent a lot of personal hours, the entire crew. We'd have parties at his place and we just go chatting over and all of that,
Okay.
So, but at work, he was a terror. So yeah, incidents like there was this one time when I was new at Zodiac Grill, and Chef Amit had told me that I needed to improve on on the cutting, on my knife skills.
Okay.
So there was this one particular dish for which I think it was a consomme, for which you had to chop these. Not chop is not the right word. I had to cut bowls full of this particular cut called a brunoise.
Okay.
Yeah. So the brunoise, technically in French cooking, and this is what you learn in culinary school, is a cut which is a dice basically which is 1 by 1 by 1 You
Wow.
understand?
Yeah.
So it's tiny. It's tiny, and then it has to be perfect. So Chef Amit was a stickler for details. He would be there by you, if you needed help, but he was a complete stickler, and you had to give him what he wanted. So very clearly. So I'd spent half of the morning doing this, cutting, chopping, and all of that, and I cut corners. I'm sure, and he comes, walks into the kitchen a couple of hours after I had started work. We started very early in the morning, and he came in and he asked me, "Ho gaya?" So I said, "हाँ chef, ho gaya." He said, "दिखाओ." So I brought out the bowls, half afraid and all of that. So he took out, a little. He took out this teaspoon that he always carried in his pocket,
Mm-hmm.
a little ivory tip the end. Sprinkled a few of the Bruno on a clean white plate, and suddenly all the imperfections emerged from it. So when he had a bowl full, it looked pretty okay to me,
Okay.
to my green eyes, which hadn't kind of experienced that kind of excellence before. So he said, "What is this?" I mean, he didn't say it that way. He used an expletive as well. I said, "Chef Brunoa." He said, did you go to school? Do you know what 1 by 1 by 1 is?" I said, so I kept quiet. He said, "You know what you should do with this?" I said, "What?" He said, "There's a stock pot there. Do you see it?" I said, "Yes." So he said, "Go empty all these bowls into the stock pot and get started all over again."
Wow.
So damn, that's where it all started. I cursed him for the next few days and all that. But today, in hindsight, when you look back, you realize that some things have to happen, have to be just the way they have to be. And if
Yeah.
somebody doesn't kind of persist, and if somebody doesn't enforce this discipline, things don't get done. We had
Beautiful.
another guy there called Shahrukh, who was then, he wasn't a chef then, he was one of the cooks
Okay.
in the kitchen, and I think I learned more from Shahrukh than anybody else in my entire working life. This guy was this huge Irani guy,
Mm-hmm.
and if Chef Amit was a badass, Shahrukh was like his grandfather. He
Okay.
was this monster in the kitchen, and being Irani and all of that, he was completely quirky. He had his whole full basket full of idiosyncrasies. But at the same time, he was this complete, he was a perfectionist. So he made, there was this dish called the chicken Zodiac.
Yeah.
So the chicken Zodiac was an amazing work of art. So Shahrukh's kitty, so we had tools, we had great quality knives and all of that in our kitty. Shahrukh's kitty included compasses, protractors, set squares, and some such.
Wow. Okay.
Because when he rolled out his puff pastry, and he cut it with something called a trellis cutter, you know, and the trellis cutter, when you, after having used it, so it cuts the pastry like a net.
Hmm.
So when you spread it later, it actually opens up into a net. So every little box of the net, or every little diamond shape that is created when you pull it apart or just kind of spread it, had to be perfect. Okay, had to be perfect, meaning had to be measured perfect. And if it wasn't perfect, he would cook that dish, and he would call in his friends from other kitchens, and they would have a party at your expense. So you learned basically that you can't deviate. There is no option. You have to give these guys what they demand, whether you like it or you don't. It is not your way, it is their way. But in hindsight, later, when you became a chef and you realize that if you do not enforce these this discipline, then you don't get the job done. So yeah, these were the gurus. These were people I looked up to, and they taught me so much about the business, and I've had a lot of fun with them. But at the same time, these moments I will always want happy moments then,
Yeah.
but I cherish them today.
No, these moments really shape or sharpen your spear, which we don't realize as
Correct.
individuals. And then when we look back, those were those tools which sharpened us up and made us what we are today as we look back. Now, 22 years, JD, if you have if I give you a bike which is almost like a time machine and say,
Hmm.
JD, you have an option you can take this bike, go back, and hit rewind naturally. And given a choice, you can do it in half of the time, which you took probably today to get where you are, or live the life again the same way you have. What would be your choice and why?
So I'm a big believer that of adventure. That
Okay.
life is one huge adventure, and I believe in change on a day-to-day basis. I like things changing. I like new challenges, whatever it may be. I do not like things getting constant or getting boring or getting predictable.
Okay.
So would I go back? For sure, man. I'd go back. I'd go back where perhaps to my those years when you were kind of deciding on who you were and what good you were and whether you were good for this, what you'd like to become. And perhaps I'd try something else. Perhaps I'd try a career which was far more was filled with far more adventure, filled with far more wonder and amazement, and perhaps chosen Ronnie's profession. So
Okay.
wildlife and photography have always been very dear to me. Perhaps
Okay.
done something in that arena, but I would have done things differently. I've had fun here, amazing and immense amount of fun. But then, yes, I would definitely choose something that's so different and from what I've done. And perhaps I just want to travel and shoot for Nat Geo or one of these, and those
Yeah.
childish childhood dreams. Yeah, live one of them.
Okay. That's an interesting twist to the answer. So, have you blend your passion? Definitely, there is passion for food, but passion
Right.
for bike, passion for photography. Have you blend that up? Have you
Yeah,
thought of?
man, completely. So I travel a lot.
Okay.
Not so much international. International has happened over the years. I've been to many countries while sailing. Even after that, I've spent stints learning to cook Italian food in Italy, and I've traveled. I've traveled a good bit. What intrigues me is traveling in India. I really look forward to that. I
Okay.
think I'd rather any day, if you told me, JD, would it be Bali or would it be one of these, would it be one of these touristy destinations, or would you go to Arunachal, or would you want to go right to Such Pass or one of these places? It would be India, and it would be here before any of these Bali, Shali kind of, destinations.
Okay.
So it's the everyday adventure. So I do a lot of I rode quite a bit till a few years back, but I realized that so I rode with not large groups. I rode with friends, very close friends, two, three of
Okay.
them. So we were always three or four people. We didn't have any rules really. Two rules, of course. I mean, you never rode when you had a drink. So drinks were only at night, and you never rode after which. And the other one was guys, whoever led always ensured that he saw the other boys in his rearview mirror.
Yeah.
So that those are the two rules. You never rode away to a point where you didn't see the other people. You rode together. So anyway, so today I do a lot of driving.
Okay.
So I hire cars from these companies, Zoom and similar, and just take off. So I've done drives completely uncharted to Himachal. In fact, just before the lockdown, me, my wife, and two very dear friends, we drove into Uttarakhand, into some very remote places without an itinerary, no bookings, no nothing.
Wow.
And we had such an amazing time. And I'm telling you, I look forward to every minute of it, to driving in those treacherous roads, on those treacherous roads, to every meal that we have, whether it is Maggie at a roadside dhaba or whether it is Munsia. I mean, we went to this place called Munsiari this time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very close to the Panchchuli mountain range. And there we went for a trek. We came back midway because it had started snowing like crazy, and visibility was very poor. And there was also the fear of bears coming out in a situation like this. So
Wow.
we came back, and there was this dhaba right where this trek begins. So at the
Okay.
gate almost, and it was snowing so much that visibility had become a problem. And we go up there just hoping he'd serve us some hot tea or coffee. And he serves us that, and he tells us lunch khayenge. So we asked him what was available, and he said local rajma hai or rice hai.
Okay.
And I can't tell you, Anis, I've not had a better meal. So, in many years. So It is just local. Munsiari Rajma, by the way, is a very famous Rajma, the cereal that is, the
Yeah.
legume that is. So we just had that and rice. And I think it's not just the food, it's the company, is the setting, is the environment, is the kind of fun you're having. It's the fact that you're completely de-stressed. So yeah, I mean, I blend all of this together, take pictures, photographs while on these trips, shoot videos while on these trips. There's music always. I play a little bit of this and that. So harmonica is something I always carry with me on these trips. So bonfires, harmonicas, guitars, and friends and so much fun. So I think yeah. So these trips are memorable, and I mix all of it, not with the intention of really mixing it, but with the simple intention of keeping it simple and having fun.
Man of many skills, JD. So, on that note, any parting thoughts for the listeners? I'm sure you've made all of us hungry, and anybody who listens on this would be hungry after this. But any parting thoughts for people, whether it's
So
career or food or anything?
no, I don't think I'm in a position to give them, I mean, ideas or advice on careers. I've had a good one. I've enjoyed myself. I think enjoyment is key. I think to slow down at a certain point is very important. This lockdown has enforced slowdown on all of us, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
It's taught us many valuable lessons, which I think I will cherish for the rest of my time. And yes, I mean, there've been great learnings in this period,
Yeah.
And going forward, I think it's a good option to see how you can introduce more substance in your life. It's a beautiful country that we live in. Great ingredients. As I mean, coming back to cuisine, there's no real need to pick up that jar of peanut butter, which is American, or a pasta, which is from Italy, or those imported fruits or those imported vegetables. Stick to Indian, stick to seasonal, support your local community, support your local restaurants, and just have so much fun. I mean, getting your roots into this new kind of ground. Going forward, that's precisely what I am going to do, and travel more and enjoy more and have a lot more fun discovering who we are, our cuisines, cultures, all of that.
Great, great. So, thanks a lot, JD, for taking time out. This was some beautiful and starving conversation, I would say. But thanks for taking time out. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Anis. It's been a pleasure completely. And thanks to all your listeners for having hung in and listened to me.
Sure.
So thanks a lot.
Definitely. Chat up with you later.
Yep. Take care. Stay safe.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you for listening in. And we close yet another episode of Masters Decoded. If you've enjoyed the episode, please, you can help us out by sharing it on social media. I would personally appreciate that. It's how we can reach more listeners, and the more listeners we have, the more awesome guests I can get in touch and convince to participate in these conversations that are a joy to have for me, and I hope they are a joy for you to listen as well. You can also help a lot leaving reviews on iTunes or your podcast service of choice. Reviews are surprisingly helpful in supporting the podcast to get to more listeners. If this episode has intrigued you, I would request you to subscribe to the podcast to stay up to date and get notified to the future episodes. With that, I bid you and see you in the next episode.